Imagine for a moment that the reality you experience every day is not simply something that happens to you, but something that begins within you. Imagine that your thoughts, your feelings, and especially your imagination are not passive reflections of the world, but active forces shaping it. This idea may sound extraordinary at first, yet it is the central teaching of one of the most intriguing spiritual thinkers of the 20th century, Neville Goddard. His message was simple yet radical. According to Goddard, the human imagination is not merely a psychological function. It is the creative power of reality itself. Neville Goddard was born in 1905 in Barbados, a small Caribbean island that was still part of the British Empire at the time. As a young man, he moved to New York City, where he initially pursued a career in theater and dance. The world of performance fascinated him because it revealed something important about human identity. People can step into roles, embody different personalities, and become someone else through imagination and belief. But Neville's life took a dramatic turn when he began studying spirituality, mysticism, and ancient religious texts. These studies gradually convinced him that the power he had seen on stage, the ability to embody a role, was actually a metaphor for something much deeper. Human beings, he believed, are constantly performing roles in their own lives, and the script they follow is written in their imagination. One of the most striking aspects of Neville Goddard's philosophy is his interpretation of imagination itself. For many people, imagination is something associated with childhood or fantasy. It is often treated as something separate from reality, something playful but ultimately unreal. Neville challenged this assumption completely. He believed that imagination is the hidden engine of reality. According to him, every invention, every creation, every change in human history begins in someone's imagination. Before a building exists, someone imagines it. Before a journey happens, someone imagines going somewhere. In this sense, imagination is not separate from reality. It is the blueprint from which reality emerges. But Neville went even further. He suggested that imagination does not only create external objects or achievements. It also shapes personal experience. The way we imagine ourselves, our identity, our possibilities, our limitations, gradually influences the circumstances we encounter. If someone constantly imagines themselves as unsuccessful, incapable, or unlucky, their actions and perceptions begin to align with that inner image. But if someone imagines themselves as capable, confident, and creative, their behavior begins to change, and opportunities appear differently. In other words, the story we carry inside our minds becomes the story we live. Central to Neville Goddard's teaching is the concept of the state of consciousness. He argued that every person lives within certain psychological states. A state is not just a mood or a temporary emotion. It is a persistent pattern of beliefs, expectations, and feelings that define how we experience the world. For example, someone may live in a state of insecurity, constantly expecting rejection or failure. Another person may live in a state of confidence, expecting cooperation and success. These states act like lenses through which we interpret everything that happens. According to Neville, changing our life begins with changing our state. This is where imagination becomes a powerful tool. Neville taught that by deliberately imagining a desired outcome, while feeling it is real, we can shift our state of consciousness. The goal is not simply to visualize a wish in a superficial way, but to experience it internally as if it has already happened. He often described this process as living in the end. Instead of imagining the struggle toward a goal, you imagine the feeling of already having achieved it. How would you think? How would you act? How would you feel? By entering that inner experience repeatedly, the mind begins to accept it as natural. One of Neville Goddard's most famous techniques is known as the state akin to sleep. This practice involves entering a deeply relaxed mental state just before sleep or during meditation. In this state, the mind becomes more receptive to suggestion and imagination. Neville encouraged people to construct a short, vivid scene that implies the fulfillment of their desire. For example, instead of imagining a long sequence of events leading to success, one might imagine a friend congratulating them or holding something that represents their achievement. The scene should be simple, emotionally vivid, and repeated until it feels real. Why did Neville emphasize this state of relaxed awareness? Because he believed that the subconscious mind responds most strongly to impressions received in moments of calm and receptivity. When we are tense or doubtful, our imagination remains superficial. But when we relax deeply, images and feelings penetrate more deeply into the subconscious, influencing our attitudes and actions in subtle ways. Another essential element of Neville Goddard's philosophy is the role of feeling. He insisted that imagination alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by emotion. Feeling, he said, is the secret. When you imagine something while genuinely feeling the emotional reality of it, relief, gratitude, joy, confidence, you are no longer merely thinking about an idea. You are experiencing it internally. This emotional experience reinforces the new state of consciousness and makes it more believable to the mind. This emphasis on feeling connects Neville's ideas to modern research on psychology and neuroscience. Studies show that the brain often responds to vividly imagined experiences in ways similar to real experiences. Athletes, for example, frequently use mental rehearsal to improve performance. Musicians mentally practice difficult passages before performing them physically. These examples suggest that imagination is not an idle activity. It is a rehearsal space where new possibilities are prepared. Another fascinating aspect of Neville's teaching is his concept of revision. This technique involves mentally revisiting past events and imagining them differently. If something unpleasant happened during the day, an argument, a mistake, an embarrassing moment, Neville suggested revising the memory before sleep. Instead of replaying the negative experience, you imagine the event unfolding in a more harmonious way. Over time, this practice changes how the mind interprets past events and reduces emotional tension associated with them. The idea of revision may seem unusual, but it reflects an important psychological insight. Our memories are not static recordings. They are reconstructions that change each time we recall them. By revisiting a memory with a different interpretation or emotional tone, we can gradually alter its influence on our current behavior. In this way, revision becomes a method of freeing ourselves from limiting narratives about the past. At its deepest level, Neville Goddard's philosophy invites us to reconsider the relationship between imagination and identity. Who are you when you are not limited by the expectations of others? Who are you when you allow yourself to imagine the most generous version of your potential? These questions are not meant to inflate the ego, but to awaken creativity and responsibility. If imagination truly shapes our experience, then using it consciously becomes one of the most important skills we can develop. When we look back at Neville Goddard's lectures and writings, one theme appears again and again: the idea that human beings are far more powerful than they realize. Not powerful in the sense of controlling every event, but powerful in the sense of shaping their own perception, identity, and direction. This power begins quietly, in the space of imagination where possibilities first appear. Imagine waking tomorrow with a slightly different assumption about yourself. Instead of assuming that change is difficult, you assume that growth is natural. Instead of assuming that success belongs only to certain people, you assume that effort and creativity can open unexpected doors. These small shifts may seem subtle, but they accumulate over time, gradually transforming how we experience life. Ultimately, Neville believed that the greatest transformation occurs when we realize that the creative power we seek outside ourselves has always been present within. The imagination that shapes art, invention, and discovery is the same imagination shaping our daily experience. When we use it consciously, we become active participants in the unfolding of our lives. And perhaps that is the deeper message behind Neville Goddard's teaching: that every human being carries within them a creative faculty capable of rewriting the story of their life. The question is not whether imagination has power. The question is whether we choose to use that power deliberately. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment, and follow us for more personal training videos towards an easy life.